Nano Machine. Bai, Anhongweolja. Chapter 91, The Dangerous Third Test, Part 1. The time given for cadets to train for the third test quickly passed by, and many things happened during that time period. It started with Chun Jongsum, the prince of the Poison clan who left the academy with an injury, and it ended with Chun Yuchan, one of two likely heirs to the throne, who lost the fight for a yellow tag and had his arm cut off. There were other minor incidents, but all the important incidents were related to Chun Yoan. In the early morning, just before the beginning of the third test, there was a guest in the chief's office. The guest was a man wearing a mask with weird symbols on it. It was the great guardian, Marakim the Dark King. There were documents in the hands of the left guardian and chief of the academy, Li Hamming. But he didn't look pleased while glancing through the documents. After going through every page, he put them down on the desk and asked, "Is this really approved?" "Yes. It was decided from the top, and the Lord approved it yesterday." If the Lord approved it, then there was no choice. I know the reason for the change, but no one would be happy to hear about the change on the day of the test. The great guardian didn't like talking much, so he stayed silent. The document that Marakim brought over had a change in how the third test would be held. The test seems to be too easy. That was the reason for the change. The test at the Demonic Academy was always chosen by the chief and instructors, excluding the first test that was held on the first day. The test proposal would then be sent to the elders and the Lord for approval. There were always cases where the test had problems and needed change, but this was the first time where a change was requested on the day of the test. This is going too far. It was hard to understand. It was strange that the Lord, who was currently trying to put down the 6 clans, had approved this. Li Hamming didn't seem to accept it, and Marakim took out something from his pocket and gave it to Hamming. It was a letter. Hamming began reading it. He then scowled and burned the letter, mumbling at the ashes. "As you wish, my lord." And hours passed after that. All the cadets gathered at the training ground for the test. With all groups now used to being in their groups, they naturally lined up according to their groups. The 11 members of Yoan's group were confident. They had perfected the sword demon formation after enduring the hard training and lessons from Yoan. The other members from Yoan's other groups were in a similar spot too. This is weird. Yoan was looking at the third group left on his left. Behind the third group's leader was Chun Yuchan, the prince of the sword clan. He was missing his right arm and was on the team as a regular member, not a group leader. He might have given up if he was a regular cadet, but it seemed like he hadn't given up all hope yet. Well, I see what they are thinking though. Most of the third group's members were Yuchan's servants. It seemed like they had no way to get a yellow tag anymore, so they beat up one of the group leaders and exchanged every member with their own. I should have done more than cut his arm off. Yoan thought he had to do far more. It had been quite a while since the cadets had gathered, but they waited a while longer than expected. The instructors who always were up on the stage before the cadets even started to gather still had not come out from the main building. Oh, there they are. That's when Li Hamming and other instructors began to walk down from the building. Hamming went up on the stage and sat on the chair. However, the instructors also brought with them people tied up tightly with ropes onto the stage. Their heads were covered with black rags. "Walk straight. This way, you fool." The instructors treated them as if they were criminals. "What is it?" All the cadets became silent and watched awkwardly. All those tied up people were put up at the front of the stage, and there were exactly 16 of them. Hamming then got up from the chair and spoke. "Have you done a good amount of training for the third test?" "Motto." The cadets shouted loudly in unison. But unlike their eager voices, their faces were filled with nervousness. "Before we move on to the test, I will announce one small change in the details." The cadets began to mumble, concerned about unexpected change. They now realized that the change had something to do with those tied up people at the front of the stage. The original test was going to involve fighting instructors with the sword demon formation. But there will be a slight change to this. Hamming then snapped his fingers and the instructors brought up 3 large wooden boxes. They opened them up and many swords poured out from within. Those were real swords. Real swords? I thought we were going to use wooden swords for the test. The cadets became confused and Hamming kept going. "The test will not change. You will use the sword demon formation to defeat the enemy." "Enemy?" Yoan frowned. And the words that came out of Hamming's mouth shocked all cadets instantly. "But, you don't just defeat them. You have to kill your enemy." The cadets began to panic. They were shocked to hear that they had to kill the enemy. Hamming then shouted by forcing his internal energy out. "Silence." Ugh. They all turned silent at once. Hamming glared and continued, "Do you see these people in front of you? Motto. They are criminals from forces of justice and evil." All the cadets were shocked. They thought something was weird when these people were brought up, but they didn't think they were real criminals. They were more like war prisoners, but for the demonic cult, they were criminals. Chapter 92, The Dangerous Third Test, Part 2. You will pass the test if you kill them with the sword demon formation. This will be your first official battle. The test was not a practice session anymore. It was a real fight against a real enemy and they needed to kill them. Most of the cadets only stayed within the 10,000 mountains, so they never seen any enemies until now. These criminals will be let go if they defeat you, so they will try hard. Don't be sympathetic to your enemies, or else you will die instead. Lee Hamming warned them. The cadets all turned grim. Of course, the 36 instructors were ready to jump if there was any threatening potential danger, but they didn't tell the cadets. Otherwise, they would forget their fear. I don't want to die. Jean Guk paled because of the fear. But it wasn't only Jean Guk. Now the test wasn't about if they were going to pass the test or not. It was whether they would survive or die. Now, we will proceed with the test. I will start with the 700th cadet, Samachuk's group. Come forward and retrieve your swords. Motto. The first group to take this test was Samachuk's group. He had been the first person to register to be a group leader, and although he was happy when he did it back then, he and his group weren't happy about going first. Go up? Instructors dragged up one of the tied-up criminals to the middle of the training ground. Then they took off the black rag and a man with a tangled beard and pale face was revealed. There were many signs of torture on his face. Ugh. He too seemed to be very nervous. He had heard about the test already and he knew what he had to do if he were to survive. However, he was still shocked to see the cadets in front of him. They're just children. He volunteered since he was told that he would be freed if he could win against the sword formation, but he wasn't told that he'd be fighting teenagers. The instructors scoffed at the man from behind. This group is lucky to fight the foolish force of justice. It seemed it wasn't likely that something would go terribly wrong. Lots of members from the force of justice valued justice or ethics, and thus they were sympathetic. It seemed this man was probably like that. Instructors untied the man and released the pressure on the blood point, freeing him to use his martial arts. Samachuk's group circled around the man and Hamming shouted, "Begin." With the order, 12 cadets all formed the 7-demon sword stance. The man then became serious. He realized that if he wasn't serious, he might die. Then his sword wielded clear white sword chi. He was an experienced master-level warrior. The 12 cadets became concerned. The only master warrior they had was Samachuk, but he too was only an entry-level master warrior. If they made any mistakes in the formation, then they might die. We have no choice. Samachuk took a deep breath and shouted, "Third formation. Gol." The 12 cadets then began to unleash sword movement at the bearded man. With each pair of students doing the same sword movement, a total of 6 sword movements were unleashed by all the pairs, inducing an amazing effect. What? The ordinary 7-demon sword had become a sword movement unleashed like that of a master warrior. They learned it well. Yoan nodded. The written explanation about the sword demon formation in the book was too simple, and there the possibility of misunderstanding it would lead a group to attack with the same formation. However, Samachuk and his group were doing it the correct way. The bearded man was shocked, but he quickly defended himself against all the sword movement. He was attacked from all sides, but he had enough experience to fight back. Ugh. However, he couldn't defend everything since he had been tied up for a long time. His muscles were stiff and his shoulder and chest were cut slightly. Second formation. Go. Samachuk then shouted at his members as the bearded man shook from the damage. The second formation was unleashed, but there was a problem. A few cadets collided against each other while trying to complete it too quickly, thus shaking up the formation. And no. Now is the chance. The bearded man then took the change to put his sword into one of the cadets' chests. When the cadet flinched and closed his eyes, the bearded man hesitated. Damn it, he couldn't bear to kill a teenage boy. And that hesitation brought him his demise. Arg. Many swords pierced into him from the back. A sword passed through his organs and through his heart, killing him. Some cadets slumped down to the ground after their first kill. Leader Samachuk looked at the dead man and bit his lips. Damn it. This doesn't make me feel any better. Regardless of his feelings, the cadets shouted in joy for the first victory. Woa! It seemed like they gained courage by seeing a fight that seemed to end easily. 2 instructors then came up to haul the body out. You were lucky, the instructor said. Samachuk and his members frowned. Like he said, if the man was cold-hearted, they would have been killed. Lee Hemming then got up from the chair and shouted loudly, I congratulate the victory of Samachuk. Regardless of the progress, Samachuk's group brightened up since they had passed the test. However, it didn't last long. The 700th Cadet Leader, 93rd Cadet, 147th Cadet, 217th Cadet, 803rd Cadet, 922nd Cadet, and 983rd Cadet. These 7 cadets have passed the 3rd test. S7? W, what does that mean? The 5 cadets who were not called out became shocked. These were the ones who collided against each other during the formation. They had made a mistake, but they thought they would pass the test since they had won the fight. However, it wasn't what they expected. Yoan frowned. So the test would be carried out as a group, but the actual result relied on each individual. Any mistake, and that person would fail. Chapter 93, The Dangerous Third Test, Part 3. During the first round of the test, Left Guardian Lee Hemming's eyes did not leave the man from the force of justice. As written in the request document to change the test, the man had been in prison for 3 years. Therefore, he couldn't use the best of his skills. If the cadets didn't make a mistake, it would be easy enough for the cadets to defeat him. There was no chance until now. Then they must be after? Hemming then turned to Chun Yoan. 2 princes had already been taken out of the academy already. One of them had her arm cut off and one had his internal energy destroyed, thus losing the chance to become the Lord forever. It will take forever for them to wait 4 years. It was apparent that those clans were dying to kill Chun Yoan. However, they couldn't go against the rule of the academy with the Lord watching over them, so they changed the test to do something else. Whatever it is, it will be your undoing. The next group came up to start their test. Walk straight. Bah! 2 instructors brought up another criminal. They untied the man and took off his mask. He was also very rugged looking with scars all over his face. Damn, bastards. It was apparent that he wasn't from the force of justice. Instructors looked at the second group with a sympathetic expression. They were against a bad enemy. They aren't so lucky. He's from the force of evil. Both forces had very different ideals and thoughts. The evil forces had no sympathy and they did whatever they could to defeat their enemies. They tried everything in their power to survive. Begin. With Lee Hemming's shout, 12 cadets readied the 7-demon sword. Their leader was Chun Mukiam from the loyal clan. Damn. This is bad. Mukiam ranted in his head. Unlike the first man, this enemy looked very aggressive and dangerous. If there was any slight mistake, it was going to be bloody. Foolish kids, you dare to try to fight me? The man then charged ahead without giving the cadets time to get into formation. He attacked the only girl cadet who seemed to be weakest in the formation with his most powerful attack. Damn it. 5th formation. Mukiam shouted annoyingly. The 5th formation was based off the 5th sword of the 7-demon sword, which was a defensive formation. So, you aren't just some ordinary kids then? The man grinned. The 12 cadets made a sword barrier by moving defensively, and the man then shifted to attack another cadet. Arg. The cadet's left arm was struck by the sword. He gasped in fear that he might die and tried to back away. Mukiam shouted quickly, fall back 10 steps. The cadets quickly took 10 steps back. If only the injured cadet backed away, it could break the formation and put the other cadets in danger. It was the right call. Man up, you asshole. We'll all die if we fail. Mukiam shouted with his telepathic message, and the injured cadet nodded with a pale face. Heh, so he's the weak point. The man then charged at the injured cadet again. He knew well that an enemy who was scared was the weak point of any sword formation. Heek. With the man charging in, the cadet panicked and unleashed the 5th sword to defend himself. Arg. However, a mere top-level warrior had no way to fight against master-level warrior. As he was pushed back, Mukiam ran toward the enemy and shouted, damn it. I told you to man up. 3rd formation. The cadets then unleashed the 3rd sword at their enemy. However, the man ignored the other attacks and cut the injured cadet's right hand which was holding the sword. Arg. He then twisted to unleash a defensive movement to defend against all the other sword attacks. With one missing from the formation, their power had decreased tremendously. The man then found another weak point. They're just kids. He stabbed out with his sword and the sword pushed out a few cadets, loosening the swords from their hands. Ha 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 ha. I did it. I beat the formation. The cadets frowned as they saw their swords flying up in the air. That's when a fist struck the delighted enemy's back. Arg. He spat out blood and was pushed forward. It was Chun Mukiam who attacked from behind. Mukiam, who feared for his life, had used his loyal fist skill instead of 7 demon sword. Mukiam shouted, "Now! First formation!" The remaining 5 cadets quickly unleashed the first sword of the 7 demon sword without thinking. There were only 5 of them, so they lacked power, but that was enough. Arg! Swords penetrated into the man, and the man who was happy that he defeated the formation died with dumbfounded shock. The other cadets who were watching Mukiam's group were also lost for words. They now realized how hard the test could be. The instructors then took their hands off their swords. They were ready to jump out if things went out of control, but such an incident didn't happen, fortunately. I will announce the result. Li Hamming called out a total of 6 cadets from Mukiam's group. And the 80th cadet, Yoan, one of Mukiam's most loyal servants, failed the test. Damn it. With the second group completing the test, a glimmer of hope came to the cadets waiting to be tested. It was to have a chance to fight against a member from the Force of Justice. But that was a false hope, as not every member from the Force of Justice was weak-minded like the first person. The third group was actually against a warrior from the Force of Justice, but the enemy wasn't the sympathetic type. He tried hard to survive and injured almost all the cadets within the group. Only 3 of them had passed the test. 5 more groups went through the test, and the only group so far that had every member pass the test was the 5th group, Chun Muyan's group. Chapter 94, The Dangerous Third Test, Part 4. Perfect. That was a perfect sword demon formation. Li Hamming complimented Muyan's group as they defeated the enemy after 2 formations. No one had made a mistake and they were all unscathed. It's our turn soon. The group tested just now was the cadet who registered to be a leader right before Yoan. If it went in order, Yoan's group was next. As expected, Li Hamming called Yoan's group. 7th Cadet Chun Yoan's group, come up. Motto. While Yoan's members went up with anxious expressions, all the criminals whose faces were covered with masks all flinched. Ugh, I hope it's not too bad. Jean Guk looked at the criminal who was pulled forward. None had died yet, but over 30 cadets had been injured. He was bound to be worried. Please, justice, justice, justice. Hu Bong was mumbling, hoping that they would fight against a member from the Force of Justice. After watching all the tests, enemies from the Force of Justice didn't seem to threaten the lives of the cadets at least. However, the groups who fought against members from the Force of Evil had many cadets who had their limbs cut off. Stay still. I will untie you. Instructor Ho? The person who brought up the criminal was Senior Instructor Ho Jinchong. Yoan became curious as Ho Jinchong usually stayed back to oversee the other instructors. The mask was pulled off from the criminal's face. He had a long beard and glaring eyes with aggressive features. He was still tied up with sealed blood points to stop him from moving, but his aura proved that he was not from the Force of Justice. Damn it. Hu Bong frowned. It was exactly what he had feared. Even the cadets who were watching expressed sympathy as they saw the enemy. Umph. The man glanced at Yoan's group, looking to find someone. Something's a bit off. Yoan narrowed his eyes. Most criminals were usually nervous or tense as they would try to find a way out or become frantic with the urge to survive. Be careful. Yoan then heard Ho Jinchong's short telepathic message. He then was able to confirm that something fishy was going on. What can it be? Yoan was already curious as to why the test had changed at the last minute. If there was something going on, he needed to pay attention to everything. And the cadets watching the test observed the group with anticipation. What's going to happen? Maybe he'll finish it like the first cadet. Yeah, but he fought the man from the Force of Justice. Right. Maybe 1 or 2 might fail. Chun Yoan had shocked all the cadets throughout every test and every incident. They were curious as to what Yoan would show them this time around. Begin. Motto. With Li Hamming's order, Yoan's members shouted in unison and readied for the 7-demon sword. But even when surrounded him, the bearded man didn't attack first and quietly readied himself. Is he ready for anything? Yoan then shouted at his members. 4th formation. I found him. The man then turned quickly and glared at Yoan. It was as if he were an eagle that had found its prey. However, the 12 members unleashed their swords at the man. Oh. It was a perfect sword formation, just like what Mian's group had showed. However, the man did not seem to care. He quickly moved his sword to easily defend against all the sword movements. It was so fast that it was even hard to track it with the naked eye. What kind of power is this? Hu Bong and Jean Guk's swords were thrown back at such powerful energy. Ha! Ugh! The man shouted and a clear chi was unleashed from his sword, breaking all the swords that touched his sword. Li Hamming got up from the chair with shock. He's not a master-level warrior. If used by top-class warriors, the sword demon formation allowed them to fight against master-level warriors. Yet, this criminal was not just defending, he was actually pushing them back. He was recorded as a master, and he had master-level internal energy when checked prior to the third test. No, he's not a master-level warrior. He's a grandmaster warrior. And just like how Hamming realized it, Ho Jincheng also realized this at the same time. If he wasn't a master-level warrior, this test had to be stopped. Fall back. Ho Jincheng shouted and charged in. He quickly unleashed his sword attack, trying to attack the bearded man. Back off. Arg. Machel. Hu Bong shouted as the man grabbed Machel's neck and threw it at Ho Jincheng. No. Ho Jincheng quickly took his sword back and grabbed Machel. Ugh. And Ho Jincheng was thrown way back with Machel with the energy that came at him. The energy was so powerful that even Ho Jincheng could not defend against it, although he was also entering the Grandmaster level. The man then turned and growled at Yoan. Heh. I will kill you now. Yoan glared at him with cold eyes. So, this was it. The man's eyes had turned red, and veins were popping up all over his entire face. The reason for him pushing back Ho Jincheng was this, the art of blood reversion. What is with him? Does he think he can survive? The man became curious. He heard from that man that Chen Yoan was just a child who was merely at the verge of becoming a master. However, he didn't run away. Instead, the kid was glaring back with no hint of fear in his eyes. Foolish kid. I will kill you as painfully as possible. The man shouted angrily and unleashed the attack at Yoan. It was so powerful that it shot through the air, threatening to cut Yoan into pieces of meat. But that's when the man heard Yoan's voice in his ears. No, you die. What? At that moment, Yoan's sword shined with white chi light and 24 sword movements were unleashed upon the man like a storm. What is this? He became shocked. His sword movement was countered immediately and Yoan's body flew right past him. Arg. The chi flowed through and the man twirled away, flying up into the air. Chapter 95, The Dangerous Third Test, Part 5. Just a few minutes ago, all the cadets who were watching the third test thought Yoan's group would pass the test easily. However, the perfect sword formation was easily blocked. Arg. And my sword. With Yoan's members' swords all being broken, they were thrown way back. The enemy was much more powerful than a master warrior. What is going on? Who is that man? All the cadets got up in shock. Yoan's other members all realized something was wrong with the test. This isn't right. Master is in danger. Ko Wonger and Baki exchanged glances. If needed, they were ready to jump in to save their master, even if this was in the middle of the test. Before they could make their move, senior instructor Ho Jincheng dashed in first. Oh. Instructor Ho is going. Ah. To everyone's surprise, Ho Jincheng was thrown back while trying to grab Machel. The cadets were shocked by the power that was thrown together with Machel. Wait, is that? That's the art of blood reversion. The man's eyes were blood red and his face was covered with his veins popping out in a disgusting manner. His voice was also coarse like that of an animal. How can a criminal from force of evil use that art? The cadets were aware of the forbidden art's existence. And as they watched, the man charged toward Yoan, unleashing a terrifying sword move that scared even the cadets who were spectating. Every of Yoan's members charged in. Master. That's when an amazing thing happened. Yoan's sword moved gracefully, leaving the afterimage of Yoan's body as he shot past the man. Arg. With a powerful storm of energy, the man was thrown up into the air, spinning, and the blood began to gush out from every one of his blood points. He then dropped to the ground, drenched in blood as if he was dead. Every cadet was at a loss for words. What they had just witnessed was Yoan easily defeating the enemy who destroyed the perfect sword demon formation and defeated Grandmaster level warrior Ho Jincheng with the power of blood reversion, in just one sword formation. Monster. Chun Mukiam was also at a loss for words. How strong did Yoan get that he could do so much? But Yoan didn't look relieved as he looked at the enemy. What was it? Yoan thought as he looked at the man. He then turned back to his sword. I felt resistance. His sword force of the sky demon had struck perfectly, but Yoan felt strong resistance as he attacked the enemy's blood points, and the sword couldn't penetrate deeper in. The man then began to move. I see. So, it didn't work. The man's upper clothes were ripped apart as his upper torso expanded abnormally. With veins popping up all over him, he didn't look like a normal human anymore. He had turned so large and growled like a ferocious beast as he glared at Yoan while getting up. Ggrrr. I will kill you. Ka-warg. Ugh. Arg. The man shouted. It was a sound energy attack. The shouting created a painful wave of energy that made cadets put their hands over their ears. But the power was so strong that some cadets vomited blood and fell. Detected series of harmful energy waves from the sound. Activating emergency defense mode. Blocking all sounds coming through the eardrum and body. With Nano's ability, Yoan was unharmed by the attack. The man frowned at Yoan, who seemed to be fine. Growling. You have to die here? Ka-arg. It seemed like he was losing his mind now. Yoan then aimed his sword at him and mumbled, try to defend against this one then. Yoan then decided to kill the enemy before things got worse and tried to unleash the second formation of the sword force of the Sky Demon. It was then? Argh. The man's left arm was cut off. The man's body, which was so strong that even Yoan's master-level energy couldn't penetrate, was cut off so easily. Yoan's eyes grew large. An unexpected figure was standing behind the man, shouting in pain. He had rugged clothes and a bottle of liquor with a red nose. It was right Guardian Submang. Heh, you dare try to touch my apprentice with your dirty hands? Teacher. Yoan was surprised by Submang's sudden appearance, but it didn't last very long. Be careful. Quararg. The man roared with anger and turned to attack at Submang. I was only told to keep you alive. Karg. Submang swung his crazy blade and easily countered all attacks. He sliced off the man's muscles. The man then slumped down to the ground like a doll. Amazing. Yoan was astonished. The butterfly blade dance skill was much more powerful when a powerful warrior like Submang performed it. He was twice as powerful than what Yoan experienced through the avatar simulation. Krrrrrrrrr. The man tried to get up, but it was useless. The man then turned grim as he realized the power difference between him and Submang. His face began to redden and he began to shudder when Submang grabbed his head. No. You can't die yet. Submang's hand unleashed an energy shock and struck the man's head, making him pass out. His attempt to commit suicide by reversing the energy within him had failed. Submang got up and shouted toward the stage. Bah! You're taking too long against such fools. Everyone then turned to the stage where they hadn't even been able to pay attention to until now. There were men with their upper clothes ripped apart like the enemy that attacked Yoan, slumped down on the stage, and Lee Hamming grabbed another man who was flailing painfully in his grasp. Aarg. With Hamming's hand that unleashed the energy, the man turned quiet. Hamming threw the man down and shouted annoyingly. You merely took care of one, you drunkard. He had defeated a total of 7 men using the art of blood reversion while the cadets didn't even know it was happening. This is the Guardian. It was such astounding power. They easily overpowered master-level warriors who had increased their powers greatly from the art of blood reversion. This was only possible because the 2 of them were within the top 10 powerful warriors in the cult. Bah, who cares? Submang shook his head. Come out. Hamming snapped his fingers and warriors with dark clothes and blue crests popped out from the surroundings. Huh? Since when did they get here? There was a total of 40 men here, but no cadet had realized they were here until now. However, there were cadets who knew who they were. Guardian Army. They were warriors from the Lord's palace that consisted of master-level warriors, and they only took orders from the Lord. The Guardian Army is here in the academy? What's going on here? Well, the criminal used the forbidden art. The cadets became frantic as the incident had happened during the 3rd test, and now the army of the Lord himself had appeared. And there was one cadet in particular who was disappointed by all this. It was Chun Kungwan from the Sword Clan. Arrest them all. Yes, sir. The warriors began to tie up the criminals and began dragging them out from the training ground. Submang then walked up to Yoan and greeted him. Long time no see, my apprentice. It has been a long time, teacher. Yoan bowed and Submang grinned. Submang, who had been waiting since the beginning of the 3rd test, was actually very astounded by Yoan's increased power. You have grown a lot. No, sir. I have far more to go. Heh, but I would have liked to see you use the butterfly blade dance skill. Oh. Yoan was speechless. Submang, however, didn't look mad or anything. He was rather curious. But that sword, Submang tried to ask something but Lee Hamming coughed as he walked up. Submang then glanced around and noticed many cadets were watching them. Hee. I will leave that for later. There were more things he wanted to share, but Submang knew the 3rd test was still going on. I wish you luck, my apprentice. Submang then jumped out, leaving the academy. Yoan watched his teacher leave. He had to look forward to meeting him again in 4 years. Yoan thought to himself as he looked. Next time we meet, I will meet you as the heir to the throne. Submang left and glanced back at the academy. I am not sure about the Lord's intention here. Submang didn't like the whole idea when he was on his way. He thought the Lord was using Yoan as bait to put pressure on the 6 clans, so Submang was going to intervene as soon as Yoan was in danger. But when Yoan used a powerful sword skill, Submang was shocked. Stay quiet about the sword skill. You must not tell anyone. He was able to confirm it after hearing from Li Humming's telepathic message that the sword skill was very similar to that of the sword art of the Sky Demon. He wanted to ask Yoan how he learned it, but he had to stop it when he heard from Hamming. If he knows, then it must be coming from the Lord himself. That seemed most likely. If Yoan learned the best sword art of the cult, then the Lord's true intention of succession lied within Yoan. Well, we shall see. He knew that the Lord was not to judge lightly. He had used Chun Yoan to oppress 6 clans until now, even when he was the son of the Lord's only loved woman. So, Submang didn't think the Lord had changed his mind so easily. But if the Lord really intended on having Yoan as the next Lord, then it was bound to bring changes to the cult. Let's go then. Yes, sir. With Submang in the lead, 300 warriors from the Guardian army ran out. It was in the direction of the Sword Clan's mansion.